always knew I had an instinct. I could see the world differently. I thought it would be like any other mission. I was wrong.
The art of the reveal is a difficult thing, and in our current industry, most publishers prefer trailers packed with either pre-rendered CGI or snippets captured from across the entire game. Yet I've always preferred a different approach. Go back to something like the reveal of Metal Gear Solid 2 all those years ago, you'll see exactly what I mean. It basically shows a series of linear events that showcases what's possible within a single level or location in the game. We saw this sort of demo again with titles such as Halo 2, Doom 3, Bioshock, The Last of Us, Killzone Shadowfall, and others. It's designed to showcase the gameplay vision of a title contained within a single location, and it really helps the potential player understand what sort of game the developer is trying to build. And with the reboot of Perfect Dark finally shown during this year's Xbox showcase, I was thrilled to see a return to this very format, albeit a slightly condensed take on it. Now, there's little doubt that the lead up to Perfect Dark has been fraught with some challenges. The game was announced years ago with a very simple teaser trailer, but since then the studio basically went silent with rumors suggesting it was in a rough state. With this new trailer, however, it finally feels like we have a proper vision for what they want to achieve. Yes, it's very much a vertical slice. Who even knows how much of the surrounding game is built at this point? But this trailer still gives me a lot of hope that they're on the right track and have found something interesting to do with Perfect Dark. The thing is, creating a new entry in a series like Perfect Dark is not as simple as it may seem. On the face of it, the original Perfect Dark is kind of the type of shooter that largely doesn't exist any longer, at least in the AAA space. It is mission and objective driven, filled with gadgets and other unique scenarios, but the central mechanics, the level design, and the way it's all put together are very much of that era, which is potentially a viable approach. You see, there's one game known as Agent 64 which perfectly builds on the style of play. The demo is excellent, and it's a fun throwback to that era of game design, but that's not necessarily what you'd want from a full-on reboot from a major first-party publisher. Instead, the initiative has opted to build a game that integrates elements of immersive sims, mixed with first-person parkour, not unlike Mirror's Edge. While we don't know the scope of the game just yet, the trailer suggests that the player will have options in how they handle each mission. In this case, it's an infiltration mission, so there will be presumably some freedom in how you reach your objective. Some things that caught my interest. One, the game uses full body awareness, allowing you to see Joanna's arms, legs, and torso while performing actions, something that increases immersion in games like this. We see different things such as vision modes and the voice recorder mechanics, suggesting the gadgets return, as you'd expect. The question here is whether there are alternative solutions for entry. For instance, the moment in the trailer where she uses the voice recorder to bypass a gate, well, a proper ImSim might allow alternative methods of infiltration. Is that going to be the case here? It's not clear yet, but the potential is interesting to think about. Later in the segment, they show off a skirmish between Joanna and numerous foes, and I appreciate things like the fruit being destroyed and the powder unleashed by an exploding fire extinguisher. I hope this hints at more interactable objects throughout the environment, as this stuff really adds a lot to the combat flow. Of course, with this demo being mostly stealth focused up until the very end, I'm also curious about what their plans are for the enemy behavior in general. Obviously, this is a huge part of any similar game. If the enemy is too sensitive or not sensitive enough, it can kind of break the whole thing down. Another key element which I feel they got right are the way the weapons and gadgets look, at least from the first person perspective. You see, you'll spend a lot of time in a game like this looking at the pistol in front of your view, right? And as a result, it needs to look good. In this case, I like the material choices and the design of the weapon. It kind of feels like a nod to the original Perfect Dark's almost liquid metal looking pistol, but with all the design benefits you'd expect in a modern game. Really though, the key here is that while there's still a lot we don't know, what is here is very promising and it seems very snappy to my eye. I really like the direction they're going in here with the development. But what about the technology? Well, we've actually spoken about this on DF Direct to some degree, but there's still some new things to take away and also things to revisit. So firstly, despite Crystal Dynamics' involvement in this game, it's built in Unreal Engine 5. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get to see an evolution of Crystal's excellent in-house technology, but still, what we have here is looking good. First, it's not clear if this demo was created on a PC or an Xbox, and while the PC is most likely being used here due to the ease of building a video asset like this, the image quality and performance characteristics kinda gave me pause. Specifically, while it's tough to count a compressed trailer, the pixel counts we did come up with all come around 1440p or so. Furthermore, the frame rate in this trailer is not stable, which could also be true of a PC given how early in development this is, but again, it's not clear. I'm not here to pass judgment on either of these elements, mind you, not at all. It's ultimately just for academic purposes, but I still find it interesting to see the choices they've made and how they present the game to the public, and it does present something that feels very feasible on the Xbox. And Perfect Dark does seem to be making use of Unreal Engine 5's specific features. Firstly, as we noted in the Direct, it does seem to take advantage of Lumen. That means rich, indirect lighting is now possible in a real-time fashion. Areas like this darkened alley early in the trailer, or the way the light bounces in this hallway, indirectly illuminating the left wall, it looks really nice. You can even spot the typical RTGI sort of noise pattern here that you get. But what we didn't get into is whether it's hardware or software Lumen, and based on this demo at least, it does seem to be using the software Lumen path rather than the hardware accelerated one. Take reflections for instance. When using Lumen reflections in hardware mode, it doesn't really need to rely on screen space information any longer, so you get much nicer looking reflections that don't suffer from disocclusion artifacts. When using software Lumen, however, it relies on screen space reflections in addition to a rough SDF based reflection beneath that. There aren't a ton of reflections in this trailer, but in this very specific scene, note how you can see the reflection being disturbed by her handheld gadget as it moves in front of it. That's all it takes for it to sort of reveal itself as a software Lumen implementation. But hey, we're talking about a 60 FPS game here. We also spotted the use of virtual shadow maps, allowing super fine detail to be represented within shadow, including these fine grass details towards the end of the video. Still, while scrubbing through the footage, I did notice one curious thing that I had to mention, and once again, this is not commentary on the final game, really, not at all. Essentially, this is the scene that helped make pixel counting possible, which is why I looked at it closely. Basically, using a flash, the enemy arrives and the game continues. But if you pause on that flash, here's two things I noticed. First, it breaks the TAA and reveals the underlying pixel structure, which is great for pixel counting. But if you look closely, while we do get those 1440p-ish edges, there's still a lot of detail being lost in the scene. So perhaps like pretty much every other 60 FPS UE5 game to date, we're looking at something more like 720 to 960p internal resolution with upsampling getting you to 1440. It perfectly lines up with what we know about performance of UE5 on consoles so far, so it seems likely. But it's also worth noting that Unreal Engine also continues to evolve, and things may improve significantly by the time this game releases. The other thing that caught my eye is the way dynamic lights work, like this one. It's currently non-shadow casting, and it's not really a big deal for a scene like this since it's so quick, but for things like muzzle flash shadows or anything else that could potentially happen in the game world, I would love to see shadow casting dynamic lights added to the game. I'm also a big fan of the soundscape they've crafted thus far. Both the voice acting and the music have a lot of potential. Though it's not entirely clear which direction they'll go, it does have a bit of a Hollywood sound to it, but there's still enough there that makes me wonder if they'll bring in themes and sort of motifs that we saw in prior games.
Generating voice print.
افتح ارسل واحدا آخر.
Really though, there's not much more to take away from this very short trailer at the moment. Heck, half the trailer is filled with pre-rendered CGI sequences that sort of set up the narrative, so there's not exactly a lot to pull from here. But I'm just happy they have finally found a vision for the game, and the game does seem to exist. I was genuinely getting concerned that it might not make it. Therefore, given its re-reveal, it's become one of my most anticipated games from the Microsoft lineup. Given the lack of a date, however, I suspect we'll all be waiting for quite a while, but when that day does arrive, you can bet we'll be there to take a look at it.